Hello, it's Alpha here, and we are back with some more AFK Journey hero testing. So today I will be sharing my first impression of the newest Wilder tank hero, Thador. And yeah, let's just get into his abilities, because initially when I kind of started reading through his skills, I was not impressed at all. But there are actually some quite cool things that he can do. So let's go through the skills. And then after that, I will share some team ideas. And then I will show some of the clips where I was testing using him on the normal arena setting. And I actually think I have a couple like Supreme Arena clips as well, but the main focus will be on normal arena performance. Okay, so let's start with Thador's ultimate ability. Basically what he does is he creates this 2 tiles wide area around him when he ultimates. And the area is quite big, so that is good, and it will last for 12 seconds. And everything that this ultimate does happens inside the area, so the kind of like one of the potential issues with this ability is that if the enemies are outside of the area, it's not going to really do anything to those enemies. But anyway, so for all of the enemies who are inside the area, they have their critical damage defense reduced by 40%, and that simply means that all of the critical hits that those enemies take will be bigger. So here we can see an example where Thador uses one of his abilities and it is a critical hit, and that critical hit does 523,000 on one of the enemies. And then on the next image, you can see that the ultimate area is below all of the enemies. And then once he does the same ability and it's a critical hit on the enemies, this time it does 667,000. So obviously there is like a decent increase in the damage numbers if the enemies are within the ultimate area and if you land critical hits on the enemies. And then the second part of this ultimate is that once the enemies take enough damage inside the area will kind of like erupt and deal some damage to all of the enemies who are still inside the area. And also it will heal the allies for some of the damage that was dealt to the enemies. And you can see in this example, this is kind of like what the eruption looks like. And you can actually see in one of these images, you can see those kind of like flames outside the ultimate. So that is kind of like a visual cue as to how close the eruption is. Once those flames kind of like go all the way through the circle, then it will erupt. But honestly speaking, I don't think this is an ability that you need to like pay too much attention, because it's just kind of like too slow to really matter in the fights, because usually like arena fights are mostly gonna be over after like the first 10 seconds or something like that. So maybe he's gonna be able to like cast this ability before that happens, but then most of the enemies or most of your team is gonna be dead by that time already. So then you're not even necessarily going to get the eruption effect, or the enemies might not be inside the area or whatever. So I don't think that this is that important ability. So then his second ability is called Dark Moon Pact, and this is kind of like important part of his kit. You can place one of your heroes behind Thador at the start of the battle, and then that ally will get a buff from Thador, and that is the buff will increase their critical hit rate by 15. And then this ability has also an active part, so every 8 seconds Thador will be creating a shield for himself and the ally that was placed behind him at the start of the fight, so he is able to protect both himself and the ally. It's kind of hard to say how valuable the 15% crit increase is for the ally. I tried to check like some of the crit rates of the heroes and crit defenses, because basically how it works is that you take your heroes like crit rate and then you reduce the enemy's crit resist from your crit rate and you get the chance of critical hit. And if I'm not mistaken, the default rate of critical hit for most heroes when they are attacking someone is like around like 60% or something. So I guess having 15 extra percent can be nice. You can land some extra crits here and there for the hero behind, but I don't think it's like that important to kind of like utilize that part of the kit. But anyway, it is something to get some extra crit rate. And yeah, the shielding part is nice. It's like a decent sized shield that happens every 8 seconds, so the cooldown is quite short. But it does have like initial cooldown of I think 1 second, so it's not gonna be like instant. The shielding is not gonna be instant at the start of the fight. So sometimes it can take a while before the shielding actually happens, but anyway, it is nice that he's able to like give some protection for the ally placed behind him. Then his second normal ability is called Crescent Cleave. Yeah, so this is just a cleave attack in 2 tiles in front of him that hits all of the enemies. And because he is like a melee hero, sometimes this can be like very low impact in my opinion. Like if there is like enemy tank and then all of the backline heroes are like quite far away from the tank, then this ability is not going to be that useful because it's like only hitting the tank hero. But I mean, it does knock down the enemies, so if there is no tank on the team, or like you're somehow able to get him next to like all of the like squishy heroes, then this ability can actually do like a decent amount of damage if it's like hitting all of the enemies. And then on top of that, it knocks down the enemies, so it's kind of like a crowd control effect as well. So in some situations, this can be like quite effective ability. And it does have like a short cooldown. It has only a 6-second cooldown, so he can cast it quite often. So yeah, when I was reading through his skills up to this point, I was kind of like, is he really going to do much? Because he kind of like just seems your like typical melee tank hero, and in the current meta, like these type of heroes are quite like low impact. But then we get into Thador's Mythic Plus ability, and this is definitely where his usefulness comes from. So this ability reads that whenever the ally who was placed behind Thador at the start of the fight, whenever that ally ultimates for the first time in the fight, Thador will create this area damage effect that will hit all of the enemies in the battlefield and will reduce their physical and magical defense. So yeah, this effect will last for 6 seconds, and it will deal damage to the enemies every 0.5 seconds, and it will reduce their defenses. And then after those 6 seconds, there is like extra hit on the enemies that is a little bit bigger hit. So yeah, all in all, this ability does like a decent damage to all of the enemy heroes and reduces their defenses, so obviously your other heroes are able to do extra damage as well during the time that this effect is happening. And then there is an extra effect if you upgrade his weapon level to +10, which obviously you should be because this is quite important effect. He will also give 350 extra energy to the hero that was placed behind him at the start of the fight. So this will also happen only once, but it happens right at the start of the fight. And 350 extra energy allows you to do all kinds of fun things. And I will talk about some of the combinations that you can do with this ability a little bit more after we have gone through all of his other skills. So yeah, then his Supreme Plus Enhanced Force ability is just simply that as long as the hero who was placed behind Thador at the start of the fight, as long as that hero is still alive, Thador will restore some of his HP every second in the fight, and I think it's 5% of his max HP every second, so that is actually quite a lot of HP. So yeah, this ability is quite nice. It just helps Thador to survive a bit more because he has this like constant healing happening, and then he also has like the shields happening from one of his other abilities, so he actually can be like quite decent at tanking as well. In terms of like his base stats, he is just similar tank to something like Daemon or Thoran, for example. Okay, so now that we kind of know all of his abilities, let's focus a bit more on the Umbral Descent, his Mythic Plus ability, because this is kind of like the main ability that you really want to use him for. So the 350 energy boost at the start of the battle for the allied hero placed behind Thador is really the main effect that you want to utilize. It is similar to what Rowan can do, for example, with his energy potions. If you don't know what Rowan does, he has the ability to give a energy potion to one of the allies, and that energy potion gives 400 energy, so it is quite similar to what this ability also does. But to some extent, I think Thador is better than Rowan, because he is able to give the energy right away when the battle starts, whereas with Rowan you actually have to wait something like 2 seconds for him to be able to give the energy potion to the ally, and also the ally has to be kind of like next to Rowan still when the 2 second happens. And also there is the fact that Rowan can be like, actually I'm not sure how it works with Rowan if he's like crowd controlled at the start of the fight. Like let's say that the enemy team is using Aaron and Ulmus, and the Aaron Ulmus crowd controls everyone and stuns everyone. I'm not sure if Rowan is able to give energy potion while he is being like stunned, but I know that Thador's energy, for example, will happen even if the enemy team has Aaron and Ulmus, so he's kind of like potentially better even in that way. And then there is also the fact that once the allied hero behind Thador ultimates for the first time, which will of course happen quite quickly because of the extra energy that Thador gives the allied hero, Thador will also do the damage to all of the enemies and reduce their defenses so that your heroes can do extra damage. So there is also that synergy that Rowan doesn't really have. Okay, so then what can you do with this extra energy? Well, I think there are a couple quite obvious combinations that you can do. So if you place, for example, Shakir behind Thador at the start of the fight, that means that Shakir can instantly ultimate. And he also has crowd control immunity while he's in his ultimate form, so then he can't be like crowd controlled right after. So you could definitely do some kind of like assassin team in combination with like instant ultimate Shakir, and then just assassins kind of like following Shakir to the enemy backline. So that could be good. Another thing that you can do is you can cast Lucy's ultimate instantly with Thador's help. So that can be really nice, because kind of like one of her weaknesses is that her range is so short. So usually she has to like walk a couple steps before she can hit the enemies, etc. But with this ability, she can like ultimate instantly, and then after she has ultimated, she gains like unlimited range. So then she doesn't actually have to move at all during the fight, and she can start like crowd controlling the enemies right away. So that can be really nice. And then there are some other heroes that have like 400 initial energy, and then if you combine those heroes with the Thador's energy boost, they can usually ultimate really fast into the fight. So something like Siren, for example, if you place him behind Thador, then Siren can usually ultimate just after like 2 seconds into the fight. And that is probably one of the best combinations that you can do with this hero, is placing him in front of Siren, and then Siren like pretty much instantly ultimating and grouping up all of the enemies. And then you have the added effect of Thador's like magical defense reduction and like Siren's ultimate doing damage to all of the enemies, and yeah, the enemies will just melt with this combination. So that is definitely a good combination. And then you could, I guess, technically do something similar with like Odie, getting a instant Odie ultimate, or like getting a really quick Odie ultimate. But I mean, Odie is not really used on the normal arena anymore. Maybe on like Supreme Arena you can still use him a bit more, but I guess you could do that. And then you also have some potential combos where you would use Thador and Rowan in combination. So first you would give a hero the extra energy from Thador, and then they would get the potion from Rowan, and that means that even if they usually start with like only 300 energy, they can actually cast their ultimate just after like 2 seconds when the battle starts. So some of these potential heroes for this kind of combination would be Shemira, for example. So with the combination of Thador and Rowan, you can make your Shemira ultimate just after 2 seconds in the fight. So this can be like very powerful. As you probably know, Shemira's ultimate is really powerful effect. So you can do something like that. And I guess like some other heroes that also start with 300 energy. I think Kulu starts with 300 energy, so you could probably do like an instant ultimate Kulu. Hodgkin starts with 400 energy, so yeah, there are just a lot of things that you can kind of like have fun with. So one thing that you have to keep in mind about these kind of energy boost effects is the Paragon level difference, because part of the Paragon buff is something called inspiration and intimidation, and the intimidation effect reduces the effectiveness of energy gain effects. But the point is that if the enemy team has 4 Paragon levels higher than your team in total, and you are trying to use Thador in combination with something like Shakir and Lucy to get like the instant ultimate, it is not going to work, because usually you need 300 extra energy to make them ultimate instantly, and this effect gives 350 extra energy. But then if the intimidation effect is too high, then the 350 will be reduced to below 300, and then you're not going to be able to instantly ultimate. So just keep in mind that if the enemy has 4 Paragon levels higher than you, then this kind of stuff is not going to work instantly. Okay, so that was all of his abilities, and then I just kind of like give a quick list of pros and cons of Thador. One of the things that I actually didn't mention is that technically you can use him even at Mythic Plus level or like Supreme level. You don't have to have him at Supreme Plus for him to work on the PvP, because the main thing that you want from him is the extra energy, and then after the allied hero ultimates, the defense reduction and damage that he does with the Mythic Plus ability. So that combination, you can already unlock it at Mythic Plus. So you can definitely use him at Mythic Plus. Now, obviously, it will help him to do some other stuff as well if he's like Supreme Plus, because he will be a lot more tankier with the extra HP regen that he gets from his Supreme Plus ability, and just in general the extra stats that he gets from being a Supreme Plus. And of course, unfortunately, the thing is that if you like usually face against teams that have like high Paragon level, then you probably kind of like have to get some Paragon levels for him as well, because otherwise the extra energy stuff is not going to necessarily work. So the second thing is that he can actually do like some damage. It can be like quite decent, because he will do like the AoE damage when the ally ultimates, and then the cleave attack that he has, if he's actually like able to hit multiple like enemies and not just like a tank hero, then that cleave can also do like a decent damage. So sometimes he shows up quite high in the damage charge as well. Sometimes he doesn't, but yeah, he has the potential to do like some damage at least. And then the other benefit is that he kind of like boosts your team's damage, because he reduces the defense of the enemies. And then also if he does the ultimate, he will reduce the critical hit defense that the enemies have, but that is not usually going to be that important, but sometimes it can be nice. And he gives some like crit rate for the ally hero placed behind him. And then he can do tanking. The biggest like kind of like weakness that he has is that you're kind of like building a team that relies on casting ultimates, etc. And that can sometimes be like not that great because there are a lot of things that can like interrupt ultimates, etc. His personal ultimate is kind of like whatever, that is kind of like a weakness that he has. And that he is like physical damage dealer. It is not like really a weakness that he is physical damage dealer, but if he was a magic damage dealer, it would be better in combination with things like Aaron, for example, or like Bonnie. But yeah, So here are some of team ideas. So one of the combinations that you can do is Aaron Olmus and then Lucy and Bonnie. And the idea is just to crowd control the enemy team with the combination of first your Aaron will ultimate and group all of the enemies together, and then the crowd control effect of Aaron will be extended by Olmus. And then once that crowd control effect ends, your Lucy is able to keep on crowd controlling the enemies because she can cast her ultimate instantly when the battle starts, and then while all of that is happening, your Bonnie's debuff will hopefully defeat the enemies. And then the second team is going to be a combination of like Thador and Siren. So with this one, your Siren can ultimate after just like 2 seconds. And then that ultimate groups up everyone, and then they will die to all of the like damage over time effects from Satrana and Bonnie, and then damage from Niru's auto attack, etc. And then if the enemy has something like Lily May to interrupt your ultimates, they will actually interrupt your Niru instead of your Siren. So that is also why you have Niru in here. One thing about this team is that it doesn't have a faction bonus because you don't have 3 heroes from the same faction. And I'm not actually sure if you need all of these heroes because like the damage that this team can do is like so high. So you could maybe drop one of the heroes so that you have more defense on your team. Like this is fine if you're using this as like attack team, it's probably going to work. But if you would use something similar as a defense team, you would maybe want to make it a bit more like defensive. So then you could maybe drop Satrana, for example, and add another Graveborn hero or Celestial Hypergene hero to get like the faction bonus. So that hero could be something like Twins or Damon or Ludovic or Callan, for example. So something like that could maybe work, but this can definitely be quite effective team. This was one of the defense teams that I was quickly testing with him, and it was working like decently well. I think one of the potential issues with this team is not having enough damage, so if the enemy team is like able to sustain through the Siren's ultimate, then maybe you don't like have enough damage to kill them. So if you try something like this and you notice that happening, you can maybe switch Almus for something more damage. Doesn't have a faction bonus, so maybe that's also something that you would want instead of like the Almus to get the faction bonus. The idea with Almus is that he will like extend the Siren's crowd control effect, but yeah, this was just something that I was quickly testing. But yeah, all in all, I'm not like super sure that you need him, but he's definitely going to be fun to have on like the arena side of things, because you can do a lot of fun stuff with the energy gains from him and then maybe combining it with the Rowan, for example. So yeah, he's definitely a nice hero to have in your arsenal, but I think he's probably going to be more focused on attack teams than defense teams, but it is possible that he will also be used on defense side of things as well.